All right, good morning, everybody. Hi, this is Rachel from Academic Advising Office. Now, first of all, thank you very much for joining. And I guess starting from the late last year, the classroom teaching has been suspended and replaced by online teaching. And since then, we have a lot of changes and arrangement being announced and implemented constantly to cope with the changes. And I think the process has been definitely stressful and really exhausting for all parties, students, teachers, administrator alike. Okay. So at this moment, actually, we do not know how the pandemic as well as the social-political situation will develop, as well as how long it will go on. So I think it's probably a good idea for us to take some time today to understand a bit more about the difficulties a student has been experiencing and what sort of support we could offer to them. Okay, whether you are a advisor, like formally assigned as an advisor or not, in preparation for the new academic year. Okay, so good. So we have a lot of speakers and sharing today, so I think I better get started. Now, let me give you an idea of the rundown today. So I'm going to share screen. Okay. Okay, so this is the topic of our workshop today. It's about the impact of the disruption to study on students and the advising support that we could render to them. Now, today, this is what we have planned. Okay, so the first part would be an academic challenges experienced by students. And here, joining me will be Mr. Kerry Deng and Mr. Thomas Wong. Both of them are final year students from the Faculty of Arts, Kerry, and Thomas from the Faculty of Science. So, so they will be giving us the students' perspective to this topic. And two very experienced faculty academic advisors will also join me to shed light on the topic, especially by sharing the issues they observe as an advisor and the support they think that their advisor need. Okay, so we have Caroline, okay, Dr. Caroline Dingo from the School of Biological Sciences, and Professor Samson Jie. So Samson's from the Faculty of Social Sciences. I'm sure all of you would know him. Okay, and we're also very grateful to Linda, Dr. Linda Young, Director of Counseling and Personal Enrichment from CEDARS, who will be joining us to share with us some advice how to support students who are under stress and what we could do to help them, as well as the services offered by COPE on this. Okay, so this is our plan for today. And during the session, feel free to send in comments, questions in the chat box, and we will take the question as we go along. Okay, so good. All right, so let me start the section one, all right? So the section one is the academic challenges impacting student studies. So from the AAO's experience, we find that one major frustration is the difficulty to plan. Okay, so this relates to overseas exchange, internship, research, postgraduate studies. Okay, and the pandemic and the travel restriction definitely have created immense uncertainty to the students. So the students think that if they keep the exchange offer, for instance, they might end up doing it online. But if they withdrew now and then reapply after the pandemic eased, the fierce competition will be so strong that they might be difficult to get a place. Okay, so this sort of conflict and dilemma it also applied to postgraduate studies. And the second thing is about their anxiety over academic performance and progression. Like at the beginning, some students who are not very comfortable with online teaching, they were pleased to have that choice of assessment, like choosing between letter grading, pass-fail grading, or late drop of courses. But as it goes on in the second semester, students were starting to worry about the choices, because if they have too many pass-failed, okay, courses, then this might affect their future postgraduate study application or employment. And on the other hand, if they choose letter grading, they are afraid that it might bring down their GPA. But having late drop as well is also going to affect their graduation. Okay, so there are a lot of worry going on in the student's mind. Now, in fact, in AAO, we have a, let me share with you one tools that we have could help students do some planning. Okay, so this is the expected cumulative GPA calculator. So basically, students, they just key in their courses and their expected GPA, and then this tool can help them look at different scenarios if they choose pass-fail or they choose letter grading. Okay, but on the other hand, we feel that it is very important that students should adjust to online learning as quickly as possible, okay, and not rely on tools to help them project what's going to happen. So on this, I'm going to invite our student advisor, Carrie and Thomas, to tell us more about the challenges related to online teaching, online learning, as well as the challenges studying from home. Okay, so Carrie.
Yes.
Can I pass over to you? Okay, to talk about the online teaching related challenges.
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Carly. I'm a final year student from the Faculty of Arts. So today I'm going to share about like how students are affected owing to the adjustment to online teaching. So I think the major difference between like traditional face-to-face teaching and online teaching is that online teaching gives lecturers and teachers more variety for them to deliver the lessons. Like for myself, I have some online lessons using Zoom or like Skype, and I also have some lecturer who only gives us the lecture notes directly and ask us to raise any question if there's any. And there are also some lecturers who give us video or audio recording for us to listen at any time that we are free. So the first issue that raised based on this difference between face-to-face and online teaching is that actually these methods and like these changes can be made in a really rapid time. What I mean is that like some courses have one or more lecturers, and so the students may get used to the teaching method of one lecturer already, and when they switch to another lecturer, they need to get used to another teaching method. So these can bring some challenges to some like weaker students who are not really confident about adapting to new styles already. So, and the second thing I think it is also important is that actually during online teaching, during this difficult period, the students themselves, the personality of the students themselves, as well as the nature of the class. What I mean is like the class size, or like what the students are like in a particular course will affect the study of the whole class to a relatively large extent. So, for example, when we are having like smaller size class, the students know each other already. So actually they can still maintain a very interactive environment atmosphere while having online lesson. It is almost the same as having face-to-face lesson. But for a larger scale class, it is rather difficult for students to raise questions, not only because it may be very interrupting to interrupt such a large class, and it is also quite embarrassing, or it's quite hard for some shy students to raise a question in front of the whole class. And another thing that I have personally experienced is that some lecturers will assume, of course this makes sense, because they will assume students understand what he or she has said because there's no question. So it is of course understandable, but I would say some students not raise question only because they were shy, or they think they will let the lecturer know that they are not as knowledgeable, or they are not such a high achiever, because they show the lecturer that, oh, I'm not understanding this, or I'm not understanding a particular topic. So I think the mindset of the students really has made a great impact on them concerning whether they are willing to catch up with the studies when they face something which they don't understand, maybe because of the delivery or the technical issues of the online teaching. So I think that's what I would say, and I will pass the time back to Rachel or to Thomas, maybe.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Carrie. So yeah, so let's hear from Thomas. So Thomas is going to talk about the difficulty to study from home. Okay, Thomas, over to you, please.
Okay, sure. So other than the problem in online teaching Carrie had just mentioned, we often heard from students commenting that studying at home becomes very ineffective with all the lectures and tutorials being taught online. So the main problem is that with the normal workload in courses, so the workload is kind of similar when it's face-to-face and online, but students feel that they have a lot more time to work on stuff like group projects or assignments. So they often leave things until the very end, until the deadline is almost coming, and then they started doing it because they don't need to travel to school, they don't have time to hang out with friends, so they have a lot of time at home. So that's why procrastination happens even more seriously. So myself I'm also a procrastinator, so I have a few humble suggestions to cope with this this procrastinating issue. So the first one being that so my advice, those advisors can can tell to your FICs. It's just my humble suggestions. So students could write down to-do list every day to force them to follow the things they wrote down. So the to-do list cannot be vague. It should be extremely specific. For homework questions, they should write down, today I'm gonna do this question to this question, but not just saying that I will revise this subject. This is very fake to-do list that is not helpful at all. And for me, I also set up some early deadline. The deadline which is much earlier than the official deadline. So if the homework is due by the end of June, I'm gonna set the deadline 1 week before or a few days before. So even if I've procrastinating until the deadline, I'm just procrastinating until the deadline, the earlier deadline. So I'm not really procrastinating at all. So that can kind of cope with the issue. And also, I also sometimes change my study environment. So when I study at home, I feel that I'm starting to feel tired and bored and play with my phone. I'm gonna change to a coffee shop or change back to school or whatever place you feel comfortable working on academic stuff. So for the second, the difficulties in group work, is actually a very kind of a serious problem because when face to face you have group meetings, you won't expect the students to not show up or not work on anything because you can face to face to tell him to work more. But in online teaching, all group meetings are held on Skype or on Zoom. Then you have no control of the quality of the work that your group mate give you. And so the only way to deal with this um, is is actually work harder on fine tuning your projects, your group mates work. This problem comes from that uh, the the grading type students choose. So for a specific like common core course, some students will choose pass or fail. Some students will choose letter grade. So of course, the letter grade students will work a lot harder because they might get like a C or D. But for pass or fail, they would just work the like most students would might work for a minimum quality of work. So they would just get a pass. But this would affect the quality of the total group work. So yeah, this is a very important issue. And for the last one, it's actually related, the boredom and loneliness actually relates back to the procrastination. So some students feel lonely compared with the time spent at campus. So in campus, when it's face teaching before, they would usually work on assignments and group projects and could chat together face to face. So they would have the motivation to work on difficult problems.
Mm.
Now, when they're alone at home, so they would lack the motivation to work on academic materials. So that's why it relates back to the self motivation. So they don't have the motivation, they don't have discipline because they're bored and they're lonely.
Mm. Yeah, okay, thank you, Thomas. And indeed, we find that this home study issue is affecting even more seriously students who are not as able. So when they are not catching up with their course material, and so when they're at home, sometimes they just let things go and then not doing anything proactively to catch up with the study.